Imagine a room, roughly 10 by 10, one light dangling overhead. In front of me, a pair of hands across a wooden table. Between my hands and theirs, a tape recorder. Slowly from out of the darkness, a face leans forward. His face was clean-shaven. Eyes resembled the Baltic Sea, while his hair was close-shaven on the sides. And on top, his short blonde hair slicked to the right. Placing his glasses on, he states, "Before we begin, I'm with the Sensitive Information Unit. All information gathered here is confidential. Do you understand?" To which I reply, "Tracking." While mulling over a plethora of papers, he looked uncomfortable. Proceeding a few moments, he posed a new question. "Would you like to proceed?" Shaking my head in discontentment, I retorted, "Negative." In the cover of darkness, another man stated, "Failure to comply is not an option." Recanting my statement, I resume. "At this time, I would like to give my statement." My interviewer tries to reassure me things will be okay. I'm not in any trouble, and this is just all procedure. For what I'm about to lay on him, I wish it were true. Breaking the pause that felt like an eternity, the interviewer hit record. A slight whirring sound began, then 2 clicks sounded off. Subsequently, the interviewer said, "My name is Carter Wright. Interviewing, state your name, branch, date of birth, and squadron." I reply, "Marcus Hunt, Senior Airman Hunt, United States Air Force. Born April 11, 1945. Paratrooper on the HH-43F. As the tape rolls for a bit more, the interviewer takes a sip of water. Next he asked, "Can you tell me about March 28th, 1965? March 28th, 1965. My unit and I spearheaded into Vietnam. Turbulence was high, and it was exceedingly hard to fly around the terrain. There were 5 men in our unit: Technical Sergeant Strobel, Staff Sergeant Hines, Airman Bonds, Airman Ford, and myself. We responded to a distress call made a few days prior. As the helicopter descended to the appropriate altitude, the door flung open. Tech Sergeant Strobel yelled, 'Let's go, let's go, let's go!' Falling through the air as I've done a plethora of times before still caused anxiety. Upon landing, we rallied at our rendezvous point. Strobel looked over the grid diagram and mapped out our next move. Cautiously, we moved through the jungle, stepping lightly. There had been reports of dangerous mines sporadically placed through the jungle. Some of the vines and foliage were too thick. We took out our machetes and hacked away. About 2 miles due north, we found a camp. American unit affiliation patches and letterings were everywhere. Most of the equipment was branded with the letters US. Brass littered the ground as the odor of grease and gunpowder filled the surrounding environment. Strange footprints riddled the ground. Bandoilers and web ropes were strewn across the ground. We knew whatever happened there went south fast. However, no signs of bodies, blood, or enemy guns were evident. Staff Sergeant Hines then discovered the direction of fire. Hines made the conjecture our boys chased down the enemy further north, possibly defending against an ambush. Traversing the tree lines, we soon noticed the narrative made no sense. Trees were littered with bullet holes, branches were snapped, and even proof of explosives was observed. We moved at a sluggish pace, no telling what the situation was before us. Miles later, we came across what seemed to be a makeshift base. disheartened would best describe my unit's morale. Bodies laid contorted and mangled in the dirt. Several men had laceration wounds, burnt flesh, and puncture wounds. It seemed a few of our units converged on this area. We continued to look for survivors. Instead, we found more questions than answers. Not a single enemy was among the dead. We questioned, was it possible that they fired upon one another as a mistake? Though as we examined the bodies, we found many inconsistencies. Very few soldiers had exit wounds. When looking to dig out the bullets, even less had bullet shrapnel. Some personnel looked as if mauled by an animal. Bonds, Ford, and myself continued to examine the camp. Meanwhile, Strobel and Hines attempt to establish communication.
About an hour passes by. Dawn is upon us as light becomes scarce. Communication attempts fail. However, we manage to repair backup generators. Instead of putting power online immediately, we hesitated. Noise could have potentially attracted whoever killed our troops prior. After the trenches were dug, we nestled ourselves in. Darkness came over the surrounding area. Nightfall was a completely different game, though we were ready for an attack. Ominous sounds of moaning ensued. Strange shrieks and screams sounded. At times we heard gunfire, then soul-clenching screams. We determined it couldn't be our troops. We were too many miles beyond the initial call zone. Also, the yelling was intelligible to us. Though if it wasn't our troops screaming, while also being too far for our troops to be the aggressor, it left the question, what's killing them? Wildlife seemed plausible, though how would that explain the wounds from earlier? Suddenly, the screams died out. Then a whistling noise sounded. It was as intricate as a bird call. Placing my hand over the flashlight, I then power on, stifling the amount of light with my other hand so I was less noticeable. Aiming it towards Hines, I then saw him signal to move right. Slowly, I eased the flashlight off. Without making a sound, I transitioned to holding my M16A1. Then I rolled over to my right side. I stopped mid-motion and remained still. At the rim of the hole, two large webbed bird feet appeared above me. This creature was bioluminescent. It emitted beautiful shades of blue and purple. Feathered wings sprouted from its back. Upon the wings were thorn-like barbs. Its head resembled that of a lion, with a bird's beak, with a roar. It fleeted almost as soon as it appeared. I think we were all too shocked to act. Compartmentalizing what we just witnessed was damn near impossible. About 10 yards away, the creature sniffed out the air. Deep inhales echoed through the trees. We quickly became aware that the creature knew we were nearby. Airman Ford aimed down range and reached for his safety. Click. That's all it took for everything to be fucked up beyond all repair. As the creature glowed a violent crimson color, Ford unleashed hell in its direction. We all joined in the blaze of hellfire. Though wherever the hell this demon came from, not even torrents of fire could touch it. It moved at surreal speeds as if it were made of light. Streaks and trails of neon light glowed as if it were a path. In one fell swoop, it phased right through space in a glimpse of half a second. Its beak took Strobel's head clean off. With the arms like that of a man, it embraced Hines while ascending to the skies. Seconds passed. As we clambered out of the trenches, we heard a faint noise until it grew louder. Hines bellowed as he fell from the sky. With a loud clap, he slammed into the ground. The impact made him splatter across us like a splash of water. Adrenaline surged through our veins as we ran mindlessly. Loud flapping reverberated in every direction. Then the jungle went still. As I panted heavily, the realization came to me. I'm the next man up. By rank, I became the lead. Inner turmoil constricted my thoughts. On one hand, I want to survive this encounter. On the other hand, I'm a warrior. I'm also a leader. I had no family, though. The men next to me had wives and children, and in that instance, I decided to make a sacrifice. I dashed in the direction we just egressed from. I let my weapon ring as if tomorrow would never come. Meanwhile, Bonds and Ford continued to retreat. Never had I been so afraid. I could feel that monster pursuing me from above. I could feel its talons sinking into my shoulders and back. Searing pain shot throughout my body. Then I heard gunshots as I passed out of consciousness. I thought I had died and went to heaven. Instead, I woke in hell. Held in captivity for 3 months straight, beaten day in and day out, watching other troops get ravaged, forced to survive on bread scraps and unsanitary water that caused dysentery. I dreamed every night that monster would come and slay them all. Even if that included me, I welcomed it. Luckily for me, I never had to taste death. Never got to ask the divine creator just what in the fuck was he thinking when he made that abomination. So I sit here, Senior Airman Marcus fucking Hunt,